Alright, we are live, ladies and germs. I wanted to get this review done yesterday, but I was kind of exhausted at the end of yesterday. So I decided to kind of let this one sit for a little bit and kind of digest what all we saw yesterday in the Chicago street course race. And we're going to be talking a lot about New Zealander Shane van Gisbergen. And you're all probably wondering, who the fuck is that? Well, I'm going to tell you. He's one hell of a race car driver. We're going to be getting into all that and more, so buckle up. This is The Fuel. This video is sponsored by Dubby Jitterless Energy Blend. Click on the link in the description and use the code PackerMan to save 10% on any order. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan and welcome to this edition of The Fuel, where today we are going to be talking about and reviewing the 2023 Grant Park 220 at the Chicago Street Course. Now, we all know, it's been well documented, that this race had a lot of blowback and was very polarizing from the moment it was announced, because it was basically replacing Road America. And I had said before, when this race was announced, that I was on board with having a street course race in Cup because it had never been done before in the Cup Series. But I didn't want it to be at the expense of Road America. But we got it, and it basically had the same reaction that the Charlotte Roval had and the Bristol Dirt race had. A bunch of NASCAR fuckwads basically poo-pooing it and saying, oh, this is a terrible idea, and all that other fucking bullshit you hear from this godforsaken fan base. Well, what do y'all have to say now? What do y'all have to say now? Because, yeah, we had weather issues and we had city official bullshit. But when it's all said and done, this race actually delivered in a big way in terms of on-track product. Was it perfect? No. There was a controversy that happened with this race, which we will get into, which I think a lot of people are just overblowing. I'll get to that when I get to it. But when it comes to the race itself, the race was actually pretty damn good. Again, it wasn't perfect, and we had an overtime, which you know how much I fucking hate those nowadays. But for the most part, it was pretty good. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, they probably should have had an earlier start time. Yeah, they could have, but let's be honest here. It wouldn't have mattered if they would have had an earlier start time or not. Because with the way the weather was, I mean, it was just absolutely insane how you had a city that was going through one of the worst droughts that I'd seen in quite some time. And then NASCAR comes along and they get a month's worth of rain dumped on them within a day. I mean, it's absolute insanity. But as it turned out, NASCAR was actually about 15 minutes from having to postpone the race to Monday. That's how close it came. But then, as the system just continued to swirl over the city, all of a sudden it started to peter itself out. And the track was finally able to be cleared up a little bit, because at one point pit road was basically a river, and there were videos from Keselowski, from Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, RFK, showing their pit stall was basically under like an inch of water. Actually, it was probably a little bit more than that, which was crazy. But they finally got it started about 6:15-ish, between 6:15 and 6:30 Eastern. So they had about 3 hours of daylight to get it in. So it wouldn't have mattered if they would have started early or not. They would have been under a delay regardless, because of how much it had rained. But they started on the wet tires, and of course it was chaotic, as you would expect. But that's what made the race intriguing, was the changing weather conditions and all that good stuff. And we've seen it before at Circuit of the Americas. We saw it at Watkins Glen. We saw it at the Charlotte Road Course. I mean, I can understand not wanting to race in a monsoon, because we've seen that before and how bad that can be. But in light rain and, not so bad track conditions where it was slightly damp or a little bit damp, then I'm honestly fine with it, So it was obvious from the get-go, because this is a road course, or a street course in this case, that one of these turns was going to be Calamity Corner. And that turn was turn 6. In fact, Noah Gragson, I mean, they may end up renaming the corner after him, because he hit the tire barrier in that turn, I think like 6 times during that race. In fact, there was a funny moment where they were pulling his car from out of the tire barrier, and his sponsor actually had a little bit of an advert where they did like a corner of the picture with his car and his sponsor. And I'm just like, oh my god. And there was somebody who posted a picture online of Ross Chastain, when Ross Chastain punched Gragson after Kansas. But instead of Chastain's head, it has a picture of turn 6. I about laughed my ass off when I saw that. But there were several other drivers that had some massive trouble in this race, like Christopher Bell, who led the most laps in this race, but according to his crew chief, got screwed by a call NASCAR made, which was them shortening the race to 75 laps. And they did this after several teams had already made pit stops. And that's basically where the controversial part came in. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this. There's nothing controversial about it. I mean, if these crew chiefs had half a brain, they could have taken a look at how long this race had taken to get to the point where they were at, and realized that this race was not going to go the distance. There was no way. And they could have planned that accordingly. And Kyle Busch even said that his crew chief said that this race might not be going the whole way, so let's go ahead and pit now and see what happens. So that was just good foresight on their part. So if you're one of these crew chiefs and teams that are bitching and moaning about how NASCAR supposedly screwed you, it's honestly on you. Because if you didn't have the fucking foresight to realize that this race was not going to go the whole distance because of how things were going, that's on you. I'm sorry. That's just you not planning ahead when you had the chance. I mean, you had the same fucking chance as everybody who pitted on lap 42, on the lap 42 caution. You had the same fucking chance to pit as everyone else who did, and you didn't take it. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's on you. So, fuck yourself on that one. But stage 1 was pretty much run on the wet tires. It took all the way to stage 2 for people to start going on to dry tires since there was starting to be a dry line starting to develop. But the section between turns 10 and 11 coming out of the Congress loop, there was a lot of standing water still over there, so going through there on dry tires was a bit treacherous, to say the least. And there was even a fucking parking lot that happened in this race, which we knew was going to happen at some point because, I mean, it's a street course. It tends to happen quite a bit, especially in IndyCar racing. So, you know, they had to get all of that sorted out. And there were 9 cautions total in this race. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at the race stats. There were 7 lead changes in this race, which is 7 more than we had in the Xfinity race. 1 pure lead change, 9 caution flags. I mean, the high number of cautions was to be expected on a street course. There were 1,201 green flag passes, which came out to 21.1 on average per green flag lap. And Christopher Bell led the most laps with 37 out of 75. This was originally a 100 lap race, but because of the impending darkness, it was shortened to 75 laps. But there were several drivers that ate the tire barriers, but still came back to record good finishes, like Kyle Busch. On lap 2 of this race, or actually lap 3, he went balls deep into the turn 6 tire barrier. I mean, and honestly, it was at a speed that honestly should have totaled the car. But because of how durable the Gen 7 car is, and couple that with the fact that the tire barriers are pretty damn soft compared to the concrete barriers, he was basically able to get out of that for the most part unscathed, and he was one of those that benefited from pitting before NASCAR decided to shorten the race. So he actually ended up with a top 5 finish, so a nice recovery for Kyle Busch, and I'm pretty sure him and his team are pretty much thinking that they came out of that race with a win, considering how the race started. It looked like Tyler Reddick was good early on, but then he ate the tire barriers late. Christopher Bell did so as well, and he was one of the dominant drivers. Martin Truex Jr. looked good early on, but then he ran out of talent near the end of this race. I don't know what the fuck happened, but he just started running out of talent in a big way at the end of this race, and was causing all kinds of problems. Of course, Noah Gragson in turn 6, you know, became a meme pretty much. But there was still a lot of good racing, especially towards the end of the race. Because after the whole thing where you had NASCAR shortening the race to 75 laps, you had the leaders coming in for pit stops on the next caution afterwards. And the 31 of Justin Haley would stay out and inherit the race lead, and he pretty much held it for a large majority of the remainder of this race. Of course, he had some pretty big challengers in the form of Austin Dillon, who was challenging him big time, and Chase Elliott, who was desperate for a win, considering that he has missed 7 races this year, 6 due to injury, 1 due to suspension, and he was trying to get a win to lock himself into the playoff, because putting himself in is going to be a pretty tall task at this point. But Austin Dillon, well, you want to talk about choking on the chicken bone in a big way. I mean, it looked like he had a car that could have gotten by Justin Haley for the lead, but then going into the last turn while trying to challenge him for the lead, he clips the inside barrier and goes straight on into the wall on the left side, completely misses the tire barriers, and completely destroys his car. And because he wasn't able to turn because he broke the toe link on the left rear, he went head on into the turn 1 tire barriers, but he was actually able to get it backed up onto pit road, and it kept the race green. So now it was Justin Haley against Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott was now trying to run him down. But then, out of nowhere, comes the Project 91 for Trackhouse Racing. The number 91 of a guy by the name of Shane Van Gisbergen. Some of you all who have been watching NASCAR for a long time, and of course this was his NASCAR Cup Series debut, and I know a lot of people are going, who in the fuck is Shane Van Gisbergen? Well, I'll tell you. He is from Auckland, New Zealand. And he is a 3-time and reigning and defending Australian V8 Supercars Champion. He has won the V8 Supercars title the last 2 years. He's won it in 2016, and then he's won it the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022. He has the 4th highest win total of all time in the V8 Supercars with 80 career wins, and he has won the Bathurst 1000 on 2 occasions. So needless to say, this guy is not like any other fucking jabroni that, would just come out of left field. Because I know some people would consider this an upset by a lot of standards, because Shane Van Gisbergen coming into this race and winning on debut is just so completely unheard of at NASCAR's highest level. I mean, we've seen it in Cup, or we've seen it in the Xfinity Series, we've seen it in the Truck Series on a couple of different occasions. But the last time that a debutante driver won in his debut start in the Cup Series at NASCAR's highest level was 1963. It had happened 6 times before. The last time in 1963 with Johnny Rutherford, who was at the time an IndyCar star. Of course, this was before it was known as IndyCar, but he was an open wheel star back then. And in his debut win was actually in the Daytona Twin 125 qualifying races, which back then was actually a points paying event and actually counted towards your win total in NASCAR, unlike today. 60 years it took for a debutante driver to win at NASCAR's highest level. That's before a large majority of the fans in NASCAR today were even born. And another thing, it's the first time since 1973, Mark Donohue in 1973, driving the AMC Matador for Team Penske at Riverside, that a ringer has come into the Cup Series and won. So, Shane Van Gisbergen has set a whole new benchmark in terms of international drivers coming in. And we had a couple. It wasn't just Shane Van Gisbergen who had, international motorsports pedigree. We also had former Formula One world champion Jenson Button driving for Rick Ware Racing, driving the number 15 car. Of course, he got spun out early on. He was trying to come to pit road, but went a little wide in the last turn and got spun off the front bumper of Chris Buescher. Shit happens kind of right there. But, I mean, those two were pretty much setting the tone in practice. So, it was pretty much, I mean, these two guys were going to be the ones to watch. But, I mean, you look at Shane Van Gisbergen. I mean, some might consider this an upset victory. But he has the pedigree. He's raced in full-body race cars on street circuits in Australia. This is nothing new to him. So it might seem a little surprising for a debutante driver to come in, especially one, outside of the realm of NASCAR, and win against this talented a field who's gotten a lot better at road racing over the years. But Gisbergen has proven that he's got the pedigree. I mean, he's a 3-time and reigning Australian V8 Supercars Champion, which is the Australian equivalent to NASCAR. Now, so he has the pedigree, and he has 80 career wins. I mean, that's not exactly something you sniff at. And he's a two-time Bathurst 1000 winner, which the Bathurst 1000 in Australia is basically the equivalent of the Daytona 500 for NASCAR. That's basically what it is. But he had a hell of a battle near the end of this race with Chase Elliott and then with Justin Haley. I mean, I'm going to give credit where credit is due to Justin Haley. He tried his damnedest to try to hold off Shane Van Gisbergen, who, by the way, was on 16-lap tires. And another thing, he was one of those that was quote-unquote burned by NASCAR's decision to shorten the race, and he went from 18th to the win. So, proving that even with strategy, it was still possible to get through the field. But I was like, damn, that 91 is fast. And I'm thinking to myself, he could win this race. He got up to second. He zeroes in on Haley. And then going into turn 7 with about 8 laps to go, he made the move on Justin Haley going into 7. But then the goddamn caution came out because Truex was into the tire barriers. Because like I said, Truex just, I don't know, he just ran out of fucking talent near the end of this race, which is shocking, considering the fact that he's usually a lot cleaner on these road racing circuits, and he's the points leader. So, you know, for him to just run out of talent like that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to have bad days. I mean, that's just the way it is. I think the law of averages kind of catches up with you in that fact, but yeah, it was a little surprising. But then came the restart with 5 laps to go. Haley got through turn 1 okay, but then Shane Van Gisbergen, one of the best things about him being a road racing expert is the fact that he has the ability to outbrake people. And of course he had the fresher tires, so that certainly helped. So, but I mean, he took it into turn 2, got by Haley, but Haley did not give up. He did the crossover move on him, and for an instant managed to get back by him. But going into the kink turn 3, he kind of overcooked it and had some wheel lock up, and that allowed Van Gisbergen to get back underneath him in turn 4 and solidly take the lead. And then the final caution came out with 2 laps to go, of course, when Bubba Wallace just decided to lose talent going into turn 1 and bury Stenhouse into the turn 1 barrier. So I'm thinking, oh great, what's going to fuck over SVG at this point? But he didn't let that affect him, and he had just enough daylight on Justin Haley to prevent any kind of dive bomb or bump and run or anything of that nature. And he pulls a shocker at the Chicago street course. So we actually had a double dose of history, actually a triple dose of history when you think about it, because this was the first time that the Cup Series has ever raced on a street course. It's the first time in 60 years that a debutant driver has won at NASCAR's highest level, and the first time in 50 years that a ringer has come in and won at NASCAR's highest level. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. And I know some people might be asking, what would a win like this do for Shane Van Gisbergen, considering that he already has the pedigree that he has in Australian V8 Supercars? Well, he's certainly going to have a name for himself here in the States now, because he's a NASCAR Cup Series winner. And over 70 years, there's only been a little over 200 drivers that can lay claim to that fact, and he is now one of them. So he's going to have that on his resume. But what this is going to do for him in his home country of New Zealand, and in particular in Australia, I mean, he was already a huge star in V8 Supercars, but getting this win at a historic event in the NASCAR Cup Series on his debut race, this win is going to, in terms of his V8 Supercar status, it's going to catapult him from being a champion and a star it's going to catapult him to superstardom. He's going to be like Dale Jr. was in NASCAR now with this victory. I mean, a win like this is going to catapult him to the next level in terms of his status in motorsports. That's what this win is going to do ultimately. And he's even hinted at the fact that he is considering maybe doing a full-time Cup stint at some point in the near future. But also, I want to give a huge shout out to Justin Marks, part owner of Trackhouse, because he was the one who brought this deal together. He and Pitbull decided to buy out Chip Ganassi Racing, go to a 2-car operation, and brought Ross Chastain on board, which I think was the best move that they could have done. The team with Daniel Suarez. And then they decided to do this Project 91 and bring in international drivers to drive it. Of course, they brought in Kimi Räikkönen to do it. And, of course, for this race, they brought in Shane Van Gisbergen, and they end up going to victory lane. I mean, where would NASCAR be in the scope of things without Trackhouse Racing? Because it was due to Trackhouse, and in particular, Ross Chastain, who delivered one of the most memorable moments of all time at Martinsville last year. And now you have a case where, you know, they have this part-time car, Project 91, and they end up winning with it. With Shane Van Gisbergen at the Chicago Street Course race. You couldn't script it any better. And honestly, this race bailed out NASCAR from what was a disastrous weekend. Partially thanks to Mother Nature. I mean, Mother Nature just completely wreaked havoc. Which is crazy because, again, Chicago was going through one of the worst droughts that I'd ever seen. And then NASCAR comes to town and all of a sudden they get a fucking monsoon. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And then, of course, you had the whole debacle with the Xfinity race and, you know, the miscommunication that happened there. And, of course, I went into that yesterday for the Xfinity review. And then you had all that rain that was happening on Sunday morning all the way into the afternoon, into the evening. And it's like, we might not get this race in tonight. We might have to do it Monday. But then Mother Nature finally decided to give NASCAR a break. And even though all the other festivities had been canceled, we finally got the Cup race in. And for what it was, knowing that the reputation that street courses have, this actually ended up being a pretty good race. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It was kind of messy. Although there were some funny moments like Noah Gragson repeatedly headbutting the turn 6 tire barrier. And of course the parking lot that happened when William Byron decided to miss turn 10. And then Corey LaJoie and Kevin Harvick spun. And that of course created the parking lot, which we were expecting all weekend. So that was pretty funny. But overall, I mean, we also saw some great racing for the lead late in this race. Honestly, I would not mind having a maximum of 2. A minimum of 1, maximum of 2 street courses. We do not need to flood the schedule with a bunch of street courses. However, I've always heard the NASCAR higher-ups said they want to have the most diverse schedule in the world. Well, you have a dirt race. Of course, there's rumors that the Bristol dirt race is done. And there are rumors that Bristol might be losing its spring date, which, I mean, the spring date is pretty much a done deal, I mean, for Bristol. I mean, all the focus is usually on the night race anyway. So Bristol, I mean, they tried their damnedest to try to do what they did with the Charlotte Motor Speedway, because let's be honest here, without the Roval, the second date for Charlotte would have been donezo too. And the Roval turned it into must-see television. They tried to do that with the Bristol dirt race, and while I do want to see a dirt race in Cup, because I think it certainly mixes things up and it adds a new layer of skill and talent that is required to be an all-around great driver in NASCAR. I think they need to have the dirt race at an established dirt track, like, say, Eldora. I would absolutely wholeheartedly love to see the dirt race at Eldora. Because for one, that would give the state of Ohio a Cup date, which I can't even remember the last time the Cup Series visited the state of Ohio. We've had the Truck Series and Xfinity Series here, mainly at Mid-Ohio, but I can't even remember the last time the Cup Series visited the state of Ohio. So if they want to have a dirt race, what better dirt track to hold than at Eldora? I mean, they held a truck race there for about a decade. So why not bring the Cup Series to Eldora? It would be a big deal. And it would be on a established dirt track. And of course you could have, one or two street races a year. There are rumors going around that Circuit Gilles Villeneuve might be on the schedule next year. That's technically a street course. And would also be the Cup Series first trip outside of the United States in terms of a points event. Of course, they've done that with trucks and Xfinity in the past, but it's never happened with the Cup Series. So that would be another history-making moment. And also, it would be a grand return to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for NASCAR, because for about 6 years they went there at the Xfinity Series, and it was honestly the most in terms of the Xfinity Series, it was the most anticipated race of the year, every year for me, because every single race at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve was a banger. It was. So I would wholeheartedly welcome Circuit Gilles Villeneuve back onto the schedule. Not only for Xfinity, but for Cup. But I would say, despite all the problems with logistics and the weather, I would say the street course race at Chicago was a resounding success. And I would say NASCAR has kind of opened Pandora's box in terms of street racing. Because there were a lot of people that were complete naysayers saying, street racing with stock cars will never work. And much like I said before with the Roval and the Bristol Dirt Race, what do you have to say now? Because now, with how successful this race was, now all of you that were poo-pooing all over this event look like a bunch of fucking morons. And rightfully so. Because that's all you NASCAR fans ever know how to do anymore, is be negative all the fucking time. Am I negative at times? Yeah, but only when it's absolutely necessary. Okay, I don't want to be negative. A lot of you just want to be negative just for the sake of being negative. Because I guess that's how you get your fucking rocks off. Which, if that's all you know how to do, then just get the fuck out and don't come back, because we don't want you here. Okay, I criticize this sport when it's warranted. And let's be honest here. 2023 has been a shit year for NASCAR in a lot of different facets. This week was pretty challenging leading up to this event. You had Jimmy Johnson, his in-laws, and the situation with his in-laws, that being a murder-suicide investigation, which that's already tough, because he was actually scheduled to run in the Chicago street race, but then he had that happen to him and his family. And then you had a contractor for the Chicago street race that was actually one of the people that was trying to put the track together, and he ended up being electrocuted and dying while on the job. So, there were a lot of black eyes that this event suffered this week. But when it came to the main event, the Cup Series, it stuck the landing when it needed it the most. So, my final rating for the Grant Park 220 at the Chicago Street Course is a 7 out of 10. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It was messy at points. But overall, I thought this was a solid race. And hey, we've had back-to-back races of at least a 7 for the Cup Series. How about that? And here's the thing, I would rather be Mr. Positive for the Cup Series and for NASCAR in general. I would love, I want to come on here and be able to talk about NASCAR in a positive light. They just make it really difficult to do sometimes with their decision making and some of the other bullshit that goes on behind the scenes. But they do have some momentum coming out of this race. And the next race is at Atlanta. It's going to be a night race, so I don't know if that's going to change things, but we'll have to wait and see there. But that is going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. So thank you very much for watching. Kansas was the best race you gave with an 8 out of 10. Yes, I gave Kansas an 8 out of 10 because it was good. Because, I mean, it had a shit ton of lead changes. It had a lot of cautions, of course, but I mean, I honestly thought Kansas was definitely the best race of the year so far. Nashville would definitely be a challenger for it because even though it had less lead changes, it still had about an equal amount of action and less cautions. This I gave a 7 because it was messy. There's no question about it, and there was some dumb stuff that happened. But for what it was, I enjoyed it. And that's all that can be said. But that's going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. See you later. This video is sponsored by Dubby Jitterless Energy Blend. Click on the link in the description and use the code PackerMan to save 10% on any order. What's happening, ladies and germs? Thank you for watching tonight's video. If you're interested in sponsoring the channel, there is a link to my Patreon down in the description box below. Otherwise, hit like and subscribe if you want to continue watching great content like you saw today. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out.